The ACT, or Australian Capital Territory, which, insofar as I can tell, is really just a malignancy on the anus of New South Wales with no objective reason for its existence, has one redeeming feature. It has a stellar, absolutely drop-dead gorgeous, awesome for all the wrong reasons, plug-in hybrid electric fire truck, which is a stunning example of advanced German new energy engineering running headfirst into bureaucratic net zero ideology. It's impossibly perfect. They've been at it for almost 800 days with this plug-in electric hybrid fire truck, right? Almost 800 days. That's nearly 2 and a bit years, okay? And in that time, that vehicle has managed to be operable for, have a guess, dude. Just write it down. Have your best guess about how often that thing is in service, because the correct answer, if you wrote 137 days. Go to the top of the class, dude. Well done, you. That's almost 1 day out of every 6 kind of thing. Let's call it 1 day a week. Who doesn't want a job like that where you only have to turn up 1 day a week? Well, that can be yours if you are the plug-in hybrid electric fire truck of the future. Dude. Those same emergency services dipshits down there, they bought themselves a fully electric breathing apparatus logistics support truck back in 2023. And you know what? This is fully electric, like battery electric. Plug it in or she don't go, dude. It's never managed to be in service, not even for 1 day, at a cost of almost $2 million. That's your tax dollars at work. And the other shitter, 1.6 million. Thanks very much. Still, I suppose it is one way to achieve zero emissions, isn't it? But I suppose if they roll out this shit show more widely, it's going to be a bit of a bummer if, I don't know, your house actually catches fire. I feel compelled to prove to you that I'm not bullshitting you about any of this. So I'm going to link to some resources that you will hopefully find in the aggregate to support the hypothesis that I'm not bullshitting you, okay? There's a great story on this from CBR City News and also region.com.au. They've covered it, as well as Auntie, and it must stick in Auntie's craw to cover this kind of thing, because Auntie does tend to sip from the net zero zealotry Kool-Aid more often than not. I think you'll agree. And there's also a link in the description to the Auditor General's scathing assessment of their dipshit procurement process for these vehicles that statistically never work. So there's that. Now, fun factoid about all of this. If I wrote this story as a script for a comedy like, I don't know, Utopia or something, I'm pretty sure a network executive would get back to me and say, hey, dude, stop smoking crack on the job and write something more believable as a basis for your show. And this proves to me that we essentially live in stranger than fiction times at the moment, because whatever you can make up in your own bizarre imagination, it's not going to be as fucked up as reality. That's the way the world is now. And to me, that's just kind of incredible. Anyway, the German useless plug-in hybrid electric fire truck is such a roll of the dice, right? It's such a roll of the dice in service today, to the extent that it is actually in service. It's made by a company called Rosenbauer, whom I had never heard of, and presumably you had never heard of them either, unless you're in that game. But that truck is such a roll of the dice that if it rolls to a job during the 17% of time, statistically, that it is actually operable, it has to be accompanied by a proper diesel fire truck, just in case, you know, Rosenbauer's curse decides to take an unscheduled dump in aisle 2 while some poor schmo's house is on fire. I couldn't make that up either. They won't let it out on its own. It has to go with a real fire truck as a frickin' chaperone in case it takes a dump on itself. And the house of the poor schmo on fire, let's not forget. And that's why they have emergency services, let's not forget. It's not to solve the problem of climate change. It's to protect people and property to the extent that this is possible, save lives, etc. I think, anyway. At least that's what it should be. The glacé cherry on the icing of this particular net zero cake, however, is that this useless shitbox plug-in hybrid truck cost $1.6 million. That was on the taxpayer, thanks very much, which is quote-unquote only $700,000 more than a conventional diesel equivalent truck. Imagine that. Paying $700,000 more, which is nearly double, for much less in-service operability. Like, come on, this is how deeply the brain virus of net zero has worked its way into the bureaucratic framework of our nation, right? It's fucked. That's the only word for it. Like, look me in the eye here, right? And show me the bit of this decision-making process and the end result that is actually evidence-based, that's driven by scientific evidence. Make me the cogent argument that net zero is not the most fucked up ideology in the developed world today. This video is possible because of my two enduring side hustles, which would be A, I get new cars cheap for mainstream Aussies, like mainstream cars for ordinary folk, and you don't have to go face to face with a car dealer, which, let's face it, is not something that many people look forward to every 3 to 5 years or whatever, and it saves time because buying a new car does tend to be an endurance event. They wear you down, and B, it's just not pleasant, because they're match fit and you're not. Well, if you use us, we're match fit as well, so we get you a good price. Most people save thousands compared with the recommended drive-away price of the new car of their dreams, and there's no obligation. You just fill in a form down there, dude. I'll put a link in the description. You click on that. You fill in your basic details. We give you a call. We take it from there. If we can help you, great. If we can't, c'est la vie. B, I do the same thing with rooftop solar and battery storage for homes and things of that nature, because that's frankly a much better deal than buying an EV, and there are so many sharks and cowboys out there as well. So I've got a system in place using a quality solar company that uses quality components and non-cowboy installers. So you get a system that is designed to do the best job it can do at your location and at a pretty favourable price as well. But mainly what we do there is we make sure that the system functions properly in your location. We use proper engineers with proper engineering oversight and all of that stuff, and quality components, so that if there is some problem in service down the track, you don't have to deal with a chatbot in Shanghai. There's local support and local inventory, and you're not sitting there with a defective solar system that somebody else has to pick up the pieces on. There's that. And obviously at the moment, the federal government has huge incentives in place for batteries, which could be home storage batteries on brand new installations of solar on houses that previously did not have solar. But you can also upgrade an existing solar array with a battery, or you can add more battery to your existing solar array with a battery. And if Albo and Chris Bowen are opening their purses and throwing money at you, and you wanted to do it anyway, the time is pretty much right now, and my team will handle all of the application for all of the rebates for you. You will get the maximum benefit, and the finger lifting ordeal there on your end of the deal will be minimized, absolutely. So no obligation once again there, link in the description. And now let's see if we could put out a few fires, or not, in the ACT. To me, this kind of fiasco, this ideology-driven net zero fiasco, an operability disaster after dropping several $1 million on two vehicles that essentially are just garden furniture at this point. This is what happens when you play tennis without the net, and you play it with people who lack the requisite level of technical training and or capacity for critical thought. And this is what our nation has become. This is how we roll these days. This is why frickin' China is going to overtake us in a heartbeat. It's because we lack the capacity to analyse the facts and make smart decisions for our own future. And the only freaking countermeasure here is if ordinary people like you and me call this bullshit out at every opportunity, because it's not like we can't fix this, but we just have to have non-muppets calling the shots, surely. The Auditor General in the ACT has slammed these clowns to the extent that the bureaucratic speak required within the framework of Auditor General reportage can actually slam anyone, but they slam them for, quote, failing to adequately assess the vehicle's value for money, which means it's grossly expensive in comparison with the return on the, quote, investment. The Auditor General goes on and says, quote, the ESA, which is the Emergency Services Agency in the ACT, did not assess the value for money of the hybrid fire truck in accordance with the requirements of Section 22A of the Government Procurement Act 2001. In any other domain, heads would roll. There would be allegations of malfeasance or corruption or something of that nature. But have you noticed that when it comes to net zero, that's kind of okay. Everyone gets a medal just for turning up, no matter how they play the game. If this was sports rorts or mismanagement of the health system or something else of that nature, then there would be a proper inquiry of some description, and presumably some sanctions would be issued against the idiots who made this kind of call, right? But net zero, dude, we don't have to bother with any of that. It does look the tits though, doesn't it? I mean, it is a very handsome vehicle. If I wanted a fire truck, and frankly, I have always wanted one, it would, modern one, it'd kind of look like that. But the basic problem is it just keeps shitting itself. It's like the Range Rover of fire trucks, the Jeep Grand Cherokee of fire trucks, the Ford Power Shit transmission of fire trucks. This is the level we've stooped to with this plug-in hybrid shitbox. I mean, come on. Meanwhile, still in the ACT and in kind of parallel with the plug-in hybrid shitbox, a fully electric Kiwi-designed and Volvo-built breathing apparatus logistics support truck, what a mouthful, which was touted as, quote, the nation's first zero-emissions logistic vehicle, which is on the ESA website, the Emergency Services Agency website there. The nation's first. So important to be the nation's first fully electric breathing apparatus logistic vehicle kind of thing. This was supplied in 2023, I think, as part of a multi-million-dollar deal to supply 7 planet-saving vehicles of this ilk for $13-ish million, like 12.78, I think it was, don't quote me. That means they're each just under $2 million a pop. $2 million. What would a combustion one cost? Less than $1 million, certainly. It arrived spectacularly in 2023, proudly humping the back of an electric Volvo Prime Mover all the way from Brisbane. How dignified. No word, of course, on how many stops to recharge en route, so to speak, or how long each one of those stops took. But anyway, it arrived and promptly shat itself. Repeat. They had to take it back to Brisbane to minimise the embarrassment, and it has not seen a single day in service in a couple of years because it's just not able to be commissioned. This is your tax dollars at work, Canberrans. This guy here, Assistant Commissioner of the Emergency Services Agency, Glenn Brewer, the Brewski, said, quote, Fire trucks are certainly not invincible. They do go in for service quite often. That's why we maintain a 50% reserve for our frontline pumper fleet, and it's one of those reserve vehicles that's replacing the electric pumper at the moment. He goes on and says, vehicles are frustrating regardless of what the vehicle is. They're always going in, always struggling with issues that need our wonderful mechanics at the ESA workshops to be able to work through. Dear Brewski, I'd love you to reveal the data about downtime on fire trucks, and let's see how far outside the fold this plug-in hybrid shitbox really is, because I suspect it's the worst vehicle in the fleet. It would be unlikely for there to be any conventional vehicles worse than that, and I get it that fire appliances are complex machines because you've got to drive water pumps and dispense hoses, and that has to happen reliably because otherwise some poor schmo's house burns down or someone dies when they might have been otherwise saved. You also need to run the lights, and there's a dirty big hydraulic motor that needs to run as well for the big fuck-off Holmatro tin snips. Holmatro, of course, being the snap-on of Jaws of Life kind of apparatus. So I get that they're complex things and all kinds of things can go wrong there, but I suspect the main impediment to this plug-in electric hybrid disaster is A, its uniqueness and the fact that you twats didn't plan for that, and B, the powertrain. Like, did you actually order any parts? Love to know that. Anyway, and I also suspect that he says, you know, we need our wonderful mechanics at ESA workshops, right? This problem, these problems would be a better way of putting it, are a little bit above the pay grade of the mechanics who just fix stuff, okay? This is a systemic integration problem, obviously, like it's badly thought out. The mechanics can't help, therefore, because they're not the problem, dude. Like, come on. That plug-in hybrid shitbox has been out of service so far for 83% of its life. And I very much doubt that any other frontline appliance in the ESA's fleet is down that often. Assistant Commissioner Brewski also said that the agency doesn't plan to acquire further hybrid or fully electric firefighting vehicles in the near term, but they'd likely be part of the fleet in future. Thank Christ. He goes on and says, quote, we want to bed down these concepts first and make sure that they're working the way we want them to before we progress any further. Where's the media advisor in all of this? You can't progress further in an environment where virtually no progress has been made in 2 years. The progress is embarrassingly, infinitesimally quasi-static. Dude, come on. Before we progress any further, you have to get out of the blocks before you can progress. And as far as I can tell, you haven't. So there's that. He goes on and says, but there are fire services across the rest of the world that are buying electric vehicles and are looking at more electric vehicles. It is absolutely the way of the future. This is just bullshit net zero rhetoric and an appeal to authority, like other fire services around the world are doing it. Therefore, we must. These are logical fallacies. There's no evidence for the electrification of fire fleets. What's the benefit? I mean, we're looking at the disadvantage. They don't work. Pretty big disadvantage. What do we hope to get out of it? Exactly. How much of the planet can we save by electrifying the ACT's fire trucks? Come on. Don't kidder, dude. This is just ideology. It's what ideology looks like. It is absolutely the way of the future, unquote. There's no evidence for that. The evidence says that the most reliable fire trucks are the tried and proven diesel ones. They're pretty functional most of the time. Like the evidence is in. And it is disgraceful for these twats to be beta testing such important devices on the public. You can't roll these kinds of devices to actual emergencies responsibly. Where's the manufacturer in all of this? Why aren't we raking the manufacturer, this Bauer, whoever, in Germany? Why aren't we raking them hard over the coals for the failure to deliver any uptime with their shitbox plug-in hybrid fire truck? Come on. The Brewski goes on, because this is how entrenched this ideology is. He says, transitioning to an electric fleet and going across to electric fire trucks is absolutely one way of reducing fire crews' exposure to diesel particulates. I got a better way of doing that, and we'll get to that in just a sec. But he goes on and says, if the opportunity arose, we'd absolutely consider an electric vehicle. Well, nice one, dude. It's working out so well so far. ACT government zealots have this net zero plan, right? It's a target. It's not based on anything. There's no real reason to have the plan for 2045, but that's the target that they've set, okay? That's going to require 300 fire vehicles to be replaced, roughly $500 million at the current rate. And they're not going to get any cheaper. They're going to be more expensive in the way that everything is more expensive. And let's not forget that the thing keeping the cost of battery-type vehicles expensive is the scarcity of the materials that are used to build the batteries. And that's not going away anytime soon. The lithium, the cobalt, the manganese, all of this stuff, there's unprecedented demand for these things, and therefore the price is high, and it's not going to reduce. And if you need to replace 300 fully functional diesel fire truck appliances type thing, and you've got worse operability, then you probably need to buy 600 vehicles, don't you? So we're talking about $1 billion worth of spending there. And exactly what is the benefit to the planet, to the nation, to Canberrans? What's the benefit? Because I'm not seeing that. I'm just seeing this zealotry about it's the way of the future. Like, if I was a dude in a white dress and red shoes, wearing a stupid hat in a big room in the Vatican once every Sunday, instructing people to be embarrassed about, what they thought about their next door neighbour sunbathing and sing some songs about happiness and forgiveness, whatever, then I can use language of this nature, the way of the future and all of this bullshit, okay? But if I'm making public policy and spending taxpayers' money, I want evidence-based decisions. I demand evidence-based decisions. And the evidence says that the technology is not there yet. It's like these freaking fire agencies around the world, like that one in Germany that spent megabucks on a brand new station and a brand new battery electric fire truck, which promptly burnt to the ground. The truck burnt to the ground, taking the brand new station with it. Victory for the planet. Come on. There's a guy above the brewski. His name is Commissioner Wayne Phillips from the ESA, and he can't shut up either when it comes to this kind of stuff, although if I was his media advisor, I'd probably tell him to zip it. Anyway, he says, quote, firefighters, both our volunteer firefighters and our paid urban firefighters, so all firefighters, are at the forefront of climate change. Just pause there. I want them to be at the forefront of rescuing people, saving their lives and saving property. That's what I want them to be at the front of, and that's what I would pay a commissioner to make them be at the front of, frankly. Not this zealotry at the forefront of climate change, like some poor schmo's kitchen catches fire at 2 o'clock in the morning. Show me the forefront of climate change aspect to saving his ass. Come on. The forefront of climate change. And we've seen that happen every day around the world, have we? So anything we can do to our part, so anything we can reduce and do our part, we want to be part of that. Like, some dude in a Tesla in freaking Germany driving along with his family has a crash and then can't escape from the freaking vehicle because the manufacturing genius who knows more about manufacturing than anyone on earth at this moment, unquote, can't figure out how to make the doors unlatch from inside after a crash. Like, how is that at the forefront of climate change? Maybe it is, only in the wrong way kind of thing. We want to be a part of that. He added that hybrid had fewer diesel particulates, quote, exploding out the back into the enclosed spaces fire trucks often find themselves in. Now, let us just detain ourselves with this exploding out the back. Presumably he means coming out of the exhaust pipe. Now, nothing explodes out the back of a truck. There's nothing exploding in a fire truck. not even inside the internal combustion engine. And I would expect the ACT's top fire person to know this, right? The only combustion process taking place inside a fire truck is deflagration. There's no explosion taking place, right? Explosions always bad in internal combustion vehicles. Particles don't explode out the back. Pro tip. Between the start of this century, 25 odd years ago, and today, I just looked this up, there's been a 96% reduction in the emission of exhaust particles from diesel engines, right? And this has been driven by regulation. 96% is effectively eliminating particles from diesel exhaust. That's what it is. That's what actual engineering innovation looks like. We take these dangerous carcinogenic particles and we can reduce them by 96%. A similar reduction, incidentally, has taken place with carbon monoxide, which is a deadly poison. It's been catalysed out of modern exhausts as well to an extremely low limit with a similar kind of reduction. So this is a fact. That's from Euro 1 to Euro 5. There's been a 96% reduction in particles from diesel exhaust. So if you want to minimise the exposure of anyone to diesel exhaust, just replace old diesel engines with new ones. Job done. That simple. Okay, so that would be the simplest way of doing it because you don't have to pay twice as much per vehicle. Pro tip. All right. It's safe to say that particles in diesel exhausts, modern diesel exhausts, are no longer a real thing. You don't have to be too concerned about that. There's probably no safe level of exposure, just like with UV radiation from the sun. But the 96% reduction, that's a massive win for society. I'd suggest CO2 is probably the biggest problem with enclosed spaces and vehicle exhausts. And pro tip there, the plug-in hybrid fire truck uses a BMW inline 6-cylinder 3-litre engine. It's a diesel engine, okay? It's a range extender kind of thing. So you're there on location in your enclosed space running your appliance with the batteries, okay? So you're using the jaws of life, your little Homatro tin snips and doing a dash roll on some car that might be on fire or not, who knows. So you're suppressing the fire with a bit of water and you're doing the dash roll to rescue a family, and all of a sudden the battery gets depleted because it's doing all this shit, running the lights, because this always happens in the middle of the night, this kind of stuff, right? And then the 6-cylinder engine kicks in and it's just as filthy as running a conventional truck. Mr. Phillips said that he's the commissioner. He said that delays in sourcing parts are likely to be ongoing due to the truck's rarity. And let me translate what that means. The truck is down because we can't get the parts, because nobody thought this through, which is why the Auditor General, one of the reasons I assume why the Auditor General decided that they'd been such dipshits about it, because obviously part of buying new capital equipment to do anything worthwhile in society, especially on the public friggin' purse, is to ensure that you have sufficient operational spares onshore and close by so that you can keep the damn thing running. And save the best quote to last for you. Quote from the Commissioner, "But if we're having this conversation, and we won't be, in 10 years' time, the commentators will go, 'What a great idea bringing an electric fire truck it was back in 2023. Executives like him should not predict the future. That's always bad, especially in the modern world when everything you say never goes away in the public domain. It's always on the record. It's always in the archives somewhere. So A, you can't predict the future. No one can, so don't. And B, if you're so stupid as to do it, it will come back and bite you. And I would argue, no, they won't. They won't be going, what a great idea any of this was, because self-evidently it's a shit idea. The Auditor General says it's been a shit idea, and blind Freddy down the pub after 20 beers can tell that this is a shit idea. And yet, because net zero ideology, we're still running head first into the future, pushing that barrow. They're going to say that we should have concentrated on saving lives and property because that's our principal function in emergency services. That's what we get paid to do. Instead, we should have just left the useless politically driven ideology at the door and gone inside the building and done our jobs. That's what they're going to say, right? Engaging with reality always works best with this kind of thing. That's how we got 12 men to the moon in the 70s, which is 55 or 56 years ago now kind of thing. It's certainly how we should fight fires and rescue injured persons from industrial accidents and car crashes and things of that nature, and anything inside the emergency services remit, I'd argue. And it's certainly the only way we can deal with climate change. We have to drop the net zero brain virus and just figure out achievable, affordable ways of making society more efficient without just spearing down this path headlong into a nightmare Orwellian future where we functionally live like we're in the 12th century, but everyone feels good about being on that road and getting us here. Like, come on. Net zero is a brain virus. It has to stop, and we have to address the problem in meaningful, achievable ways.